Well, good evening. It's 6 o'clock. We're going to get started at the February 5th Planning Commission hearing for the City of Reno, and we are going to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Velto, take it away.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right, next we'll do roll call.
Commissioner Villanueva.
Here.
Commissioner Becerra.
Howdy.
Commissioner Del Villar.
Present.
Commissioner Draculich.
Here.
Commissioner Velto.
Here.
Chair Romeyer. We have a quorum.
Perfect, thank you. All right, next is public comment. This is for any item on the agenda or any item not posted on the agenda. Should we start with request to speak online?
Sure. Members of the public may call into the meeting to provide public comment by using the Zoom link provided on the agenda, specifically https://links.reno.gov/P_C 02-05-25. It should be noted for those in the audience that comments are to be addressed to the Planning Commission as a whole. Comments heard under this item will be limited to 3 minutes per person and may pertain to matters both on and off the Planning Commission agenda. Please note that the Planning Commission may not take action upon any matter not agendized for possible action on today's agenda. When you are called on for public comment, please state your name for the record and begin speaking. The timer will begin when you say your name, and you will be afforded 3 minutes. If you are an attendee in the Zoom meeting and would like to make public comment at this time, please raise your hand. Lastly, while in this room, please be respectful. Warnings will be issued by the presiding officer if there is disruptive behavior, and you will be asked to leave chambers if the behavior continues. We did receive public comment for a future agenda item, but I do not have any request to speak forms for this particular item unless that is not the case according to the folks in the room.
Does anyone wish to speak under general public comment?
We do have one participant with their hand raised in Zoom, so maybe we go to them first.
Yes, please.
All right, and please unmute yourself. You'll have 3 minutes to speak and state your name for the record.
Hello. Hi, my name's Ann Evans. I'm a constituent in Ward 6. I am just voicing my concerns around the data centers and am in support of the moratorium on accepting any data centers and planning for Reno until we have a better sense of the strain on our resources, especially from the perspective of using water in a city so vulnerable to fires. I, like many, have had go bags packed and watched watch duty as fires ravaged South Reno specifically and encroached into downtown, possibly into the greater city, and know that any acceptance of data centers without further research is really a slap in the face to our firefighters and our first responders and telling them they're about to fight bigger fires, more extreme fires with less water, as data centers are a strain on our power grids and our water supply.
All right, thank you. Do we have any other online public comment?
No one else online has their hand raised at this time.
Okay. Do we have requests to speak forms for general public comment?
Not for this item.
I see a few hands. If you'd like to speak under general public comment, you're welcome to come to the podium, but please fill out a comment card when you're done.
Can you hear me? I filled out a public comment card, and I also submitted written here. Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa Hill, and I have been participating in some of the meetings related to data centers, so this is on item number 5. And I'm speaking in favor of the moratorium. I do live in Reno, have been for many years, and I have been participating in the recent meetings with interest, and I've actually learned quite a bit about data centers, the different types, and have actually emailed some questions to Mr. Raley and some of the development staff here, and they've been very kind in answering some of my questions. I wanted to just say for the record, because I think sometimes it's assumed that somebody like myself that has concerns about the data centers or the energy or water use is anti-data center or anti-development, which I am not. I understand that data centers are part of our future, that artificial intelligence is part of our future, and we need development in this community for our economic stability and for our people. I am pro-quality of life, though, and I am pro-environment. And I would like to see this moratorium in a sensible way to allow representatives like yourself, as well as city staff, to really truly investigate the impact that these types of developments will have on our community and on our environment. And I was told by Mr. Raley and some of the staff that, including my council person, Mr. Reese, that there are a lot of barriers to, my question was, why can't we require data centers to use solar electricity and bring that with them? We have abundant solar energy. We don't have a lot of water. And if we continue to put in data centers that use a large amount of, say, for example, in the one that was that you denied and was overturned by the city council, the web, as I understood it in that discussion, that data center was going to use a large amount of capacity of that red rock. Is that my time? Okay, so what I've done is I have since learned that there are a number of different Nevada revised statutes, and as I understand it, I don't believe any of the statutes preclude the council from looking into these requirements, and I've written them out. And I would just request that you do investigate data center types that are suited to our environment, and that you do look into some of the things that I've submitted in writing. And I just want to see us provide clear, sustainable requirements for developers and investors so they know how to do business in our community. And I want to thank you so much for listening and taking time. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak under general public comment? Okay, please come and then make sure you fill out a comment.
Yes, I already filled one out. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Chantel Dominguez. My pronouns are she, her. I am a constituent of Sparks, Nevada. I've been born and raised in Reno, Nevada, and I've lived here almost my whole life. I am also speaking to the issue of data centers. I have the privilege of working with frontline communities, organizations, and municipalities, water warriors across the nation that are fighting to protect their rivers and waters. We work on ever-evolving and expanding threats such as dams, mining, infrastructure mismanagement, toxic pollution, and more. One of the major growing threats, both in severity and quantity that we're seeing across the nation, are the impacts of data centers and the impacts and consequences that they have on our lands, local ecology, and waters, really, truly across the nation. As such, I also speak in favor of the moratorium. Manny Becerra in the moratorium called for a proactive and thoughtful approach to understanding the impacts of the emerging land use. He also reminds us of the Reno Master Plan's commitment to sustainability, quality of life for all residents in this beautiful place that we all have the immense privilege of calling home. Our river, the Truckee River, provides drinking water, provides over 80% of our drinking water. It's more than a resource. It's the lifeblood of our communities. It's the lifeblood of us. It is life. As we move forward, I also call for increased research, sustainability, a focus on natural infrastructure. Where are we getting the water supplies? What is this going to do in our already immensely drought-stricken environment? Thank you so much for your time. I hope that you will think of the health of the river, the health of all of you, and the health of our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any others under general public comment? Yes, please.
All right. Hi, my name is Nick Migliori. I'm here as a citizen concerned about the Web Data Center, and specifically the administration interpretation that categorized data centers as warehouses. As I'm sure you know, data from the DRA shows that we are the fastest warming city in the US, which means that we need to scrutinize development that could exacerbate our problems even further. The U.S. Department of Energy estimates that a typical data center can consume up to 50 times more energy than a commercial building of the same size due to the processing power required. Data centers need an extraordinary amount of water to cool this equipment, maintain indoor humidity at around 50%. This is to stop electrical fires. But maintaining cool temperatures and high humidities in an 82,000 square foot building during our increasingly hotter summers does not seem like a reasonable use of our limited and valuable water resources. An average data center of this size can consume more than 5 million gallons annually. And according to the USGS drought monitoring, Nevada has spent around 3/4 of the last 25 years, about my lifetime, in some level of drought. A third of that time being in an extreme drought. With a climate so sensitive to droughts, it seems unintelligent, frankly reckless, to allow a company to consume millions of gallons of water a year, especially when the blame for these drought conditions is being passed on to ordinary citizens. I remember as a kid being taught to ration water in elementary school. Let's be real, data centers like this are not going to make Reno a tech hub. Colivore, one of the companies most likely to set up shop at that location, is based in Santa Clara in the heart of Silicon Valley, and I don't see why they would come to move here when they're already in the heart of that tech world. Instead, they plan on using water, electricity, and land for profit, land which has been given out cheaply to corporations like Tesla, who laid off 10% of their workforce last year, and with no regards to the actual people who live and have to deal with these environmental consequences. I'd like you to reconsider your interpretation and do further research into categorizing these structures not as warehouses, but with actual science behind it. Thank you very much. Have a good one.
Thank you. Would you fill out a comment? Okay, thank you. Right, are there any other comment cards or?
I don't have any more for this item, no.
Okay. All right, we will close general public comment and move forward to the approval of the minutes from the meeting of January 15th, 2025.
Move to approve.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. All right, moving on to number 5, which is the presentation, discussion, and possible recommendation to encourage City Council to adopt a moratorium on the filing and issuance of permits for data centers. Staff want to give some words?
Yes, I'll just give a quick overview of some background on this item, and then turn it over to Commissioner Becerra for a presentation. This item was put on the agenda at the request of Commissioner Becerra. I do want to clarify that only the city manager and city council have the ability to initiate a moratorium of any sort, so this is a recommendation to the city council. Staff will summarize the outcome of this meeting and all the public comment, and that will be included as an attachment to a staff report being prepared by staff that will be presented to the city council on February 26th. Which the council has requested potentially initiating a text amendment to the code to address data centers, so that will be included under that item. So with that, I will turn it over to Commissioner Becerra.
Sure, thank you so much, Mike, and thank you everyone here that's shared their input for, against, or neutral. Really, tonight's presentation on data centers and the topic at hand is more of a discussion that hopefully leads to a resolution that we can elevate to our elected officials at the city council level. As you all know, or most folks know, the last probably 6 to 8 weeks have been a little confusing with regards to how we evaluate data centers. One core pillar that I hope we can establish moving forward with this proposed resolution and is that we can find predictability for applicants, community, the staff, this body, and everyone else involved. So we have something that reflects the Reno Master Plan, and also a comprehensive framework that is nimble or adaptable, right? We don't want something that is set in stone, but something that we can iterate on as well as life changes or happens in a year or two. But definitely something that's more than what we have today. Ms. Callie, would you be able to pull up my presentation or find staff member there next to you? So I'm just going to kind of fly through this. I'm not sure if folks can see this. I'm not sure if we can put it in the big screen up here, just so the folks up front can see it. Most of the sentiments that I highlight here are probably sentiments or points that the general public or staff have shared at some point or another, so we'll fly through this pretty quickly. At the end, there's a proposed motion. The motion is kind of a work in progress. It's meant to just start the kind of conversation, and this body can finesse it and either approve it or not, or take other action as the body sees fit. So, click, please. Quickly, in summary, since December, our body has reviewed 3 data centers, with more expected, is my understanding, and the interest will just continue to grow, and it's imperative that we have something to work with in terms of long-term economic, workforce, sustainable, and community impacts. There's a lot of now benefits, but I think what's missing is the long-term, right? And that's key. And I think smart, collaborative, and flexible planning breeds predictability. And I'm hoping that most folks can get around that. Click, please. So further on that, the framework that we're missing, and what we hope to accomplish with a moratorium or a temporary pause, really, right? And a temporary pause that's time certain, because we don't want to also elevate something to city council that is a year from now or 2 years from now. Let's be a little agile about this. Let's move fast, right? I think we can make that happen. And I think most folks would appreciate that, both on the business side or private side and the general public side and staff. Click, please. So again, this is not a ban, but we're going to hopefully focus more on not allowing new permits to flow through, which can cause strain on our infrastructure and our resources. And we're not really sure what the economic returns for the city and the residents are long term, right? And really, this is a good opportunity to level up as a city and see what we can do to keep business open, be a place that we call home, and have good quality of life. Click. So, what this resolution proposes is to do that research and analysis that we heard from the general public. I think part of the sentiment I heard from staff in the last 6 to 8 weeks has been that they too would prefer some level of predictability. I don't want to speak for them, but I'll let Mr. Raley and his staff opine on that this evening if they'd wish. And of course, ultimately develop a policy that again is nimble or adaptable that we can all use moving forward. Click. All right. Yep. We don't want to react. We're going to just lead, be a bit more strategic about this. And we're going to go and move to the next slide too, please, sir. And I think the missed opportunity so far is that everyone wants to play ball. We have EDON, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency, or the Regional Planning Commission. We have our fine friends at the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, and so many more on both the public and private side that have so much knowledge, experience, and valuable input on how to move forward with this land use. And if we can all kind of bring it to the table in this public venue and come up with a solution, I think we'll be in good hands. So if we do pass something this evening, my hope is that it's a temporary time certain pause, and again, would allow for a more data-driven review of the true impact of data centers in Reno. Really takes into consideration all the public input that we've heard not just this evening, but the last 6 to 8 weeks, and is business-friendly as well. We want to be a place that businesses come and say, we want to do business there, because we know what to expect. They support us, and at the same time, they feel like they have skin in the game as far as vested interest here in this community that we all call home. And let's go ahead and go to the next one, please. So here's the proposed motion, kind of a lengthy one. Doesn't have to be this by any stretch. It's just to kind of get the conversation going. I'll let folks kind of read it on their own. Main thing at the end, though, is that I do believe it needs to be time certain, right? We don't want to drag this out either. So kind of with that, I'm going to pause, and I would love to open it up to my fellow commissioners, staff, and anyone else who would like to chime in and hear your thoughts on whether you're for, you're Swiss, you're maybe against, and if you are against, maybe would love to know specifically why.
I have a question. Do we do disclosures on these things, or? Probably should. Okay, our next step would be disclosures from the commissioners.
I'll go ahead and start since I'm chatting, and I'll hand it off. Let's see, I spoke with Edon, staff from TMRPA, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency, and read and reviewed material submitted from the general public on this matter over the course of the last 2 months.
Commissioner Villanueva, I read emails, I spoke with representatives from Sierra Club, and I believe that's it.
We'll go this way. Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I have read and reviewed emails. I've spoken to the Regional Planning Agency. I've spoken to staff. I have also talked with Sierra Club, many residents, and of course, I work at the Nature Conservancy.
Commissioner Del Villar, similar to what other folks have done. I also spoke to Edon recently about the data centers, and a lot of folks in Ward 4, as that is where I live, and that's where a lot of these are going. And then read all of the comments, public comments and emails that have come in.
Commissioner Velto read and received emails, spoke with city staff about this resolution, and I think that's it.
Commissioner Draculich, are you on Zoom?
Yep, I'm here. Yep, read and received emails, that's it.
Thank you. All right, following disclosures, we'll open this up to public comment. We have a number of comment cards here. I'll just go through them. Just remind everyone that there's 3 minutes to speak, and then we'll do the online public comment as well. So starting with Bill Miller.
Good evening, Planning Commission members, staff, and fellow concerned citizens. I'm Bill Miller, a longtime Reno resident who is deeply concerned about the escalating impact of climate change on our community. As most of you know, Reno holds the record as the fastest warming city in America, 7.1 degrees since the 70s. Like Southern California, we are now home for a new type of explosive wildfire, never before seen, due to this warming. And as everyone should know, this warming is being caused by humans burning colossal amounts of fossil fuels that create a greenhouse effect that can last millions of years. The point being, if we intend to survive as a civilization or even a species, we need to reduce our output of carbon, not increase it. That brings us directly to the topic of data centers, which consume enormous amounts of power, far more than can currently be supplied by renewables due to the Byzantine business model of our local power monopoly. That model discourages solar, specifically rooftop solar, in favor of building new methane-burning power plants. NB Energy was recently green-lighted for 2 new methane plants for peak loads only. Well, that's pure wishful thinking. According to ChatGPT, and yes, I actually am in favor of progress, the typical data center consumes 50 megawatts of power, enough to power 40,000 homes. That's each data center. So if we allow them on our grid with no restrictions, soon we're up to 200,000 homes or more. Where does that power come from? Virtually overnight, NB Energy's peak load will become a 24/7 reality. and we will be filling our skies with heat-trapping carbon and setting the stage for unprecedented wildfires, leading to death and destruction on a massive scale. The answer to this dilemma is simple. Require data centers supply their own green power. There is ample geothermal potential in Nevada. Build the centers where the geothermal power is, avoiding costly delays to permit and install new power lines. Besides that, we have sun almost every day. Battery storage is affordable and reliable as an auxiliary source. We are facing a life-threatening crisis. There are ways to mitigate it. You have the power to do so. Please use it wisely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Ruth Flack.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners, staff, and citizens of Reno. My name is Ruth Flack, a retired nurse, a longtime Reno resident, and climate advocate. I'm speaking in favor of the moratorium. As you know, our planet is on fire. In Reno, the Davis and Callahan wildfires this fall are examples of what citizens can expect every season for many years to come. As you also know, Reno is experiencing the highest temperature increases in our nation. All across the western United States, wildfires blaze, destroying communities and precious resources. This global overheating due to human activity of the burning of fossil fuels triggering a climate crisis is the reason I am speaking to you tonight. Nevada continues to burn carbon for power generation and will do so far into the future. Meanwhile, Reno City Council has just approved 2 new data centers against your advice. The size of the Webb data center, as stated by its developers, will be 82,000 feet. However, these developers do not divulge how much power they intend to consume. Yet it was approved by the Reno City Council. With that in mind, we know that an average data center, similar to the Webb data center, will consume 50 megawatts of power, enough to power 40,000 homes. Some estimates are higher. Where will the power be coming from? Presumably there will be some solar, some wind, but most of the power will be generated by the burning of fossil fuels such as the coal burning plant in Valmy. Although it is being converted to natural gas, it will continue to spew emissions. Additionally, the power to run this data center will also come from the incineration of highly toxic methane gas from the 2 new power plants that the state has approved Nevada Energy to build. Considering that Nevada is one of the sunniest and driest states in the nation, the logical answer to power these centers, I believe, is to use the sun energy and batteries, or geothermal, both abundant resources here in Nevada and mostly untapped. These data centers should be required to provide their own green power as a legally binding part of their contracts, rather than shifting the burden of the cost to the Nevada Energy ratepayers, many of whom are struggling to pay their current bill for the comparatively small amount of power that average householders use. A data center is not required to provide their own, if data centers are not required to provide their own green power, the burden adversely affects the citizens of our community, both in terms of their health by breathing toxic air and other heat-related effects on their body, the threat of wildfire and the burden of paying the bill for a data center industry operations. I ask that you mandate a moratorium on data centers and consider these proposals when creating guidelines for allowing data centers here in Reno. Thank you.
Thank you. Bobby Ma?
Good evening. My name is Bobby Ma, and I've been a Reno resident for 6 years. I came from Arizona, so I know about water shortages. I know that we'll probably approve data centers. What I'd like to do is to make sure that the Planning Commission adopts rules such as the data center should use all renewable energy for its operations. Also, to use reclaimed water, and then use water-efficient cooling system technology to maximize efficiency, and which allows a net positive water impact. Also, the data center should avoid blow-down pollutants, and they should require that the water be treated before discharge. We have switch in Reno, Nevada, and if you research switch, they are about 13 times bigger than the 50 megawatt places. They use all of these things. That's my statement, and I hope you consider it. Thank you.
Nancy Ann Leader.
Hello, Commissioners. I am Nancy Ann Leader, and I'd like to assume to my own talk everything that everybody else has said, because I agree with that, and I'll shorten what I said. I live out in Ward 4 also. I'm very concerned with water and electricity especially. Some other things bother me also, because I don't think they're a warehouse, and I don't think they should have been considered a warehouse. They don't store things. But in the north, we have already 2 recycle plants that are discharging reclaimed water into Swan Lake, creating a problem for Swan Lake. So there is some reusable water that could be mandated to be used for this data center. I'm concerned about fire because I'm administrator of an estate within maybe 1 mile, maybe a half a mile of the beginning of the Davis fire. Luckily, the fire jumped over us with the help of the wonderful firemen we had down there. But I live in Ward 4 and have since 1965. So I've seen the growth out there. I'm not against growth. But I think we have to have sensible growth. And every time a data center is approved, knowing that all of this water has to be used for cooling purposes, you are preventing, not you, of course, the commissioners, but the city is preventing home building. We have a home shortage. So is that a reasonable choice for the citizens of Reno? I would say not. So on the water side, we have fire danger. We have taking water, using water that otherwise could support families in houses in the city. And we have a use of all this electricity using methane gas. Thank you.
Thank you. Jordan Daschle.
Hello, my name is Jordan Dashiell. Good evening, guys. Thanks for having us here to listen. Appreciate it. I represent Reno Sunrise Movement, which is a climate advocacy group that's new in Reno. I'm also an environmental engineering major at UNR, repping the sweatshirt today. And I believe that you should support this moratorium. I've seen a couple of presentations, and I think that the lack of regulation and policy allows for data center builders to be a little bit lax in the information that they present to you regarding environmental impacts of their projects, particularly when the project boasts that there are low VOC emissions from the center. They fail to communicate the true air pollution of the center. Commissioner Velto, I think, rightly compared data centers to a semiconductor manufacturing plant. But to my understanding, data centers use a lot more energy than a semiconductor manufacturer. And to that end, the low VOC claim pales in comparison to the carbon emissions from producing the energy to run a data center like the Webb data center or the other ones that I've seen. In this case, the VOCs are only a small fraction of the air pollution that would result from a data center being built. Secondly, I think a few proposals I've seen have boasted their sustainability through the number of native trees that they're going to plant. However, I think that planting trees, especially up in the North Valleys, will actually end up destroying the biodiversity of the area by taking nutrients from the sagebrush, which grows so readily out there. I think we're going to end up speeding up the desertification of the area by allowing developers to plant trees where they would naturally grow. Not to mention the water needs, the water needed to irrigate such large numbers of trees on a site that would negate any sustainability that the trees would offer. I would also like to add that I personally am not anti-data center. My sister is a computer scientist. She loves ChatGPT. She's used it to help me out on a lot of stuff. But I think sustainability is definitely something that should be considered, especially when it comes to data centers, which will take so much of our natural resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Hill, who spoke under general public comment, did you want to add anything? Same is true for Chantal Dominguez, said spoke under item 3. Okay, you're good. All right, Barry Leviston.
Good evening, commissioners. Thanks for being here. Thanks for letting us speak. My name is Barry Levinson. I'm a retired physician and engineer, and I'm Justin Green, so you know where I stand. I would like to speak in strong support of the resolution by Commissioner Becerra to recommend a moratorium on data centers. The writing is on the wall. Data centers are coming, and we really can't stop them from coming to Reno whether we want to or not. I recognize this truth, and it's not a bad thing. However, we can put in place reasonable criteria and guidelines for allowing them into our community to protect the public and the environment from their effects. Firstly, data centers consume a huge amount of energy, as we all know. The Webb data center is a 30-megawatt facility, which is enough electricity to supply about 20,000 homes, according to my calculation. Who should rightly pay for the infrastructure needed to generate this electricity? I believe it is simply not fair to ask the population, the ratepayers, to cover these costs. Reno ratepayers should not be on the hook to pay for data center electricity demand. Then there's the effect on greenhouse gas emissions. Our state is far from our goal of 45% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. Adding these data centers powered by fossil fuel gas generation is going to blow a hole in the city, the county, and the state goals. I believe that these data centers should be required to supply at least a large portion of their own renewable energy, including rooftop solar with battery storage or geothermal energy, as has been mentioned. We also need guardrails on water usage. Some data centers use a tremendous amount of cooling water, whereas there are other much more water-conserving technologies available. This issue should be studied thoroughly, and our city should define limits on the amount of water usage. Finally, the economic benefits to our community are far from clear, especially given the large tax abatements afforded to data centers. After construction is completed, long-term employment at data centers is minuscule, like 10 people in this huge building to run the place. How effective is a new data center in attracting other new businesses? We don't really know. We need a clear accounting of the true economic and employment benefits to Reno. In summary, the City of Reno should have a moratorium on approval of any new data centers until we fully understand the impacts of data centers on our electricity supply, on any projected electricity rate increases, on our water supply, on projected greenhouse gas emissions, and to fully understand the economic impacts. I urge you to adopt this resolution. Thank you very much.
Kathy Fulkerson?
Hi, I'm Kathy Fulkerson. I'm facilitator of Third Act Nevada, a national organization empowering seniors to protect the planet. I was born and raised in Reno and support Agenda Item 5, the recommendation to the Reno City Council to adopt a pause on data centers. A pause is needed to consider their impacts on the lives of Reno residents. Data centers are already here in Nevada and across the nation. The use of data centers and AI is becoming more and more integrated into our daily lives. I get that, but here's the rub. Data centers typically demand huge amounts of energy, requiring infrastructure costs that are currently borne by Nevada ratepayers. The recently approved Webb data center will demand an energy load of 30 megawatts. This is comparable to the total output of the Steamboat geothermal power station. The developers have agreed to pay for a fraction of the infrastructure costs, upgrading the Peavine substation that they will need because of the energy they will need to run on a 24-hour basis. However, the cost of building a power source that can generate and deliver 30 megawatts of electricity to that Peavine substation will be borne by ratepayers. Nevada ratepayers will pay for the design, construction, and operation of something equivalent to Steamboat in order to generate enough energy to meet the demand for one data center and for any costs of any wildfire started by the power transmission. A 2024 study found that low-income Nevadans carry severe energy burdens, defined as a 10% or more of their household income going toward energy bills. That's up from their 2020 study. In 4 years, low-income Nevada households have shifted from carrying a high energy burden to carrying a severe energy burden. And I have the reference in my footnote in this sheet I'll give to you. Energy insecurity is life-threatening in Reno. And unless data centers and other high-energy users, such as cryptocurrency mines, are required to carry their full energy costs in a sustainable manner, each one will negatively impact the quality of life in Reno. Nevadans will end up paying, unless something's done during this pause, Nevadans will continue to pay for increasing energy rate hikes, will experience increasing power shutoffs because of grid demand and wildfire prevention, and will feel the increasing effects of climate change. For all of these reasons, I urge you to consider this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Palmer, and it notes that there's a presentation.
Good evening. For the record, Robin Palmer, climate and community advocate. I agree with the whereases and support Commissioner Becerra's resolution to encourage Reno City Council to adopt a moratorium on data centers. Data centers are typically resource intensive and have significant detrimental impacts on a community and its residents. A planning commissioner for Santa Clara, California, has likened data centers to tapeworms in that, quote, they continue to grow, they continue to feed, they continue to consume resources, and they provide almost nothing to the city, end of quotes. The process of incorporating this definition of data centers into county or into City of Reno code by means of administrative interpretation was deceptive and does not instill public trust. There was little to no effort by the city to garner public comment prior to this administrative interpretation. There was little to no effort to inform the public of this administrative interpretation. the public had little real opportunity to appeal the decision within the obligatory 10 days after issuance. In the December 18th Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Carl maintained that the administrative interpretation immediately upon issuance established code and set the requirements for a conditional use permit for data centers. However, in that same meeting, Mr. Foster said that an administrative interpretation had not been formally adopted. Formal adoption would be considered with the perfunctory second reading at the January 8th Reno City Council meeting. The code language was agendized as zoning code cleanup for the January 8th meeting. The administrative interpretation was new code language, and in my opinion, was not code cleanup. Title 1803.205 specifies the procedure for an administrative interpretation. Oh, that's not this yet. Specifies a procedure for an administrative interpretation when an application is received for use not addressed by code. The administrator is to consider several facets of the impact of the proposed use and establish use-specific standards to, quote, decrease the potential impacts to the surrounding properties or the community, end of quotes. The administrator did not fully consider the potential impacts of data centers. New code necessitates a code text amendment in my mind. This is new code. Here are the procedural steps for consideration of a code text amendment. Administrative interpretations are not precluded from this process. This administrative interpretation smells funny.
Thank you. Olivia Tanager.
Hi, Olivia Tanager for the record. I didn't prepare comments nearly as eloquent as the folks who have spoken before me, but I don't believe I've yet spoken to this body about some of the economic impacts of data centers that we've made before other bodies. So after speaking to you last time, we did some digging about some of the tax abatements pertaining to data centers, and I did want to raise that on the record once more. So at the state level, per the GoEd website, there is a 75% property tax abatement for qualifying data centers. There's also a reduction in sales tax abatement down to 2%. And I think that that's notable because you've had several data centers come before this body and say that there's going to be a substantial amount of tax revenue that you're going to get. I heard through the grapevine that maybe your meals are now being canceled because of budget shortfalls at the city of Reno, and certainly Reno is not alone in that. And so I think we need to be really cautious here and put a pause on data centers like this moratorium is suggesting while we fully evaluate the economic impacts or lack thereof of data centers, and certainly evaluate what other industries we could be bringing here that would bring more tax revenue or how we can fix that tax piece. In my opinion, we should be bringing industry here who is able to bring in tax revenue and who is able to bring more economic benefit to the city and to Nevada, rather than just employing a handful of full-time employees and getting very little in the way of taxes. So that's the only thing that I will note, other than I will reiterate that we are also concerned about the rising utility costs associated with data centers and the infrastructure related thereto. So thank you.
Thank you. Zach Hooker.
Hello, everybody. My name is Zach Hooker. I am also an environmental engineering student at UNR, and I have lived here my whole life. I'm here to support Mr. Becerra's moratorium on data centers. Thank you for proposing that. All of my points have already been said plenty of times, but I just really want to reiterate that I am really concerned about the resource use that these data centers will hold, especially with how water is such a limited resource in Reno right now. And additionally, I think that with having a lot of the data centers being designed by outside developers, it doesn't really, they don't have quite a good understanding of Reno's resources. Like my friend Jordan talked about planting deciduous and pine trees where they do not grow normally is going to put a large strain on the water resources as well as the soil. And Additionally, I want to talk about how I would like these to help support employing Renoites. I've heard that the 75% tax abatement will go to data centers that can employ 10 Renoites within 5 years. I think that's a little bit ridiculous. And so I want to make sure, and additionally, as well as the concerns about the rising energy costs associated with this, especially since Reno is kind of in a housing crisis right now, and finding housing for people is really important and close to my heart. I also just want to reiterate that with the city council members and just everything that's going on, things have felt really bleak as a young person. And with last week, the 2+ hours of public comments about the no sitting, no lying ordinance, for it to just get ignored was really defeating. And I really want to just say that a lot of me and a lot of other people are putting our hopes in you to help to see if you can get the council people to listen to us and do good by our city. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Nick Migliori, you already spoke under general. Did you want to say anything else? I think he left. Okay. Bob Blackstock?
Yes, my name is Bob Blackstock. My wife and I live in West Reno, which is Ward 5, which is the ward for Devin Reese. We've lived there for the last 5 years. We moved here from Southern California. She wanted to move up here to family, so we've been making trips up here to Reno for years, and it's been quite a delight to actually finally live here in Reno. My background is in engineering business and inventions and similar items. So I'm here to speak in favor of the moratorium on the data centers. And my first engineering job out of engineering school at Stanford University was to work for one of the big tech companies there in Silicon Valley. So I feel like I'm fairly familiar with electronics and software and similar technical items. I also was a venture capitalist in Santa Barbara. We did several deep dives on energy generation capabilities, solar panels, and also energy storage and so forth. So I feel like I'm fairly familiar with those kinds of issues. And definitely I'm in favor of environmental issues and green energy. But let me leave you with this, and that is, this seems like a very wild idea, and I've been wondering why it is that President Trump wants to buy or actually occupy Greenland, the island that's off Canada, and it's full of ice. One of Trump's bestest buddies is Elon Musk, who is an artificial intelligence proponent, and so what do you do to generate artificial intelligence? You use data centers to do that with. You need to cool those data centers. What does Greenland have more than anything else? Ice. So could it be? I haven't heard it explained why it is that Trump wants to possess, own, occupy Greenland, but my guess is that he's working with his tech buddies to find ways to cool data centers that are going to be necessary for artificial intelligence. And one would think melting the Greenland ice cap would not be a good idea. So if that's not a good idea to put these data centers in there, and data centers really are, to a large extent, thermal dissipation facilities. And the one that's being considered there and actually was approved a couple weeks ago here by the Reno City Council is a 30-megawatt facility. So if you use an energy conversion rate on that, so that's going to be dissipating something like 3 megawatts of thermal energy. So if it's not okay to melt the Greenland ice cap, I don't know why it would be okay to put thermal energy dissipation centers here in Reno. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a statement from Tracy Kosinski that in favor of the moratorium, but wishes not to speak. Did we have any public comment on Zoom or any
I
other?
believe we have quite a few people registered to speak on Zoom. If you would like to speak during public comment, please raise your hand at this time. All right, Maddie, we're gonna go ahead and unmute yourself. State your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. Maddie, are you able to unmute your mic?
Hello, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. Hi everyone, my name is Maddie Casey. I've lived in Reno for 20 years. I'm 25 now, and this is my first ever public comment. I'm speaking today because recent local, national, and global events have made me realize that if I want to live somewhere that is respectful and kind to its people and the land they live on, I have no choice but to become more vocal, whether it be with my family and friends, in online spaces, or by making a comment to my local city officials. So as my first baby step into the foray of Reno's many pressing issues, I would like to voice my strong, unwavering support for Commissioner Becerra's recommendation of a data center moratorium and encourage my fellow constituents to speak on this issue. To proceed with the permitting of data centers in Nevada without appropriately thorough consideration for economic, environmental, and social impacts would pose great detriment to the land and the people that we so desperately need to protect. I want to be clear, I wholeheartedly recognize and respect the potential benefits of data centers. I might not love the idea of another big concrete building in our world, but I can still understand the appeal and necessity of bringing data centers to Nevada. I appreciate the potential of increased job opportunity and more fiscal assets/resources flowing into our community. I respect the goal of adapting to be a more tech-forward city in an increasingly technologically focused world. But I urge you, and I will also urge City Council, to consider that as it stands, we are failing to be proactive, and these advantages would come at great cost. Our land, which is not an empty desert, but rather a stunning example of vibrant and resilient life, deserves consideration. Our demand for clean water and efficient energy within already strained treatment, production, and allocation processes would increase greatly, and that deserves consideration. Our peaceful communities that would be polluted by increased light, noise, and traffic deserve consideration. Our city's backbone, the people who would live near these centers, build them, and work in them, deserve consideration. We must relentlessly advocate for all entities to pull their own weight in our communities, and that means contractually holding data centers accountable for the resources they want to use, rather than allowing them to shift the responsibility and detriments onto our fellow constituents. I believe we can and will move forward with data center permitting and construction. I respect their necessity and benefits of bringing Reno into a new digital era. My hope is that we only do so when we have exhausted all possible avenues to ensure our people, animals, flora, and landscapes, these core pillars of the beautiful Nevadan communities we love and live in, are best protected from negative outcomes. I thank you for your time, thoughts, and energy tonight. Be well.
If there's anyone else who would like to speak on Zoom, please raise your hand at this time. We do not have anyone else on Zoom with their hand raised.
All right. Seeing no more public comment, we will close the public comment and open this to discussion and questions from the commissioners.
I have a lot of comments on this, and I want to start by acknowledging that data centers raise legitimate concerns regarding energy use, land use, environmental concerns. These are really important issues that deserve thoughtful discussion. My concern is that while we are called the Planning Commission, I think there's an assumption of the power we have and what we can do as a Planning Commission that goes far beyond the scope of us passing a resolution. This type of resolution is more appropriate for either the planning or the city council or a neighborhood advisory commission. And there's 3 reasons why I think that I think are very important for us to think about when we decide to make policy decisions as a board. First, we are not a political body. We are first and foremost a fact-finding body that applies established law and determines whether there is substantial evidence to make certain findings under NRS Chapter 278. It is very important that as a board, we maintain impartiality, and passing a resolution that predisposes us and tells the public how we feel about a certain type of land use will only be used against us. And I'm really struck by this because we as a city do not want to incur unwanted litigation, waste resources. If the commission takes a formal stance against data centers, it would call into question objectivity for all future land use decisions regarding data centers. I'm telling you as a lawyer that if there's a future planning commission item where someone comes forward with a data center project and we have already passed a resolution seeking a moratorium, then we vote against it, that resolution is Exhibit A to a judicial action arguing that we have violated their due process, came to a meeting predisposed on the outcome, and not given them an impartial hearing. I want to say that more simply. If the commission passes a resolution seeking a moratorium, that will be used to make a due process argument if we vote against a data center and give them an argument in district court to try to reverse our decision. That is why it is so important for us to be impartial when we are approaching land use decisions and not make policy decisions that predispose us and tell the public how we're going to vote. Because we act in a quasi-judicial manner, it's important that we don't make up our minds beforehand. And even if we do, we don't tell the public we've already made up our minds, because that will be used against you in future decisions. The second issue I have with the resolution is I don't think we have authority as a planning commission to do this. Our authority is outlined under NRS Chapter 278. Specifically, if you start at NRS 278.30 and go down to .265, that outlines all of our authority. There's nothing in there that authorizes us to make resolutions to another body, which is again why I think this discussion, while very important, needs to happen at either a neighborhood advisory commission or at the city council level. And for us to make the decision here, I think violates what power we have under Nevada revised statutes. Third, and I want to underscore this, the city council makes this policy decisions and tells us it's policy. It's not the other way around. I was very struck at the last hearing we had, where it was expressed by some of the commissioners that the city council had already told us or expressed that they were considering a moratorium. And I was kind of in shock by that, because I assumed if that had happened, I would have read about it. That would be significant, but I kind of accepted it at face value. Only then to hear, a few weeks later, they vote to pass or approve data centers, which tells me they were not contemplating a moratorium. Now again, this discussion is super important. We've heard abundance of public comment telling us their problem with data centers. That all needs to be evaluated. I have no reason to think that that is not important and we shouldn't be talking about it. But for us as a commission to make a resolution and say, here's how we feel about these data centers, we are totally screwed on future agenda items when data centers come forward, because that's the first argument in court. And that is a devastating argument that our commission was not impartial. So I am urging you all to consider the significance of your vote today versus the significance of your vote on a project when it matters, and what will matter more. Because this resolution can be submitted to council by public comment or as a recommendation, but the minute we as a body take action, we are in serious trouble for the fairness of future hearings, and think about how that will affect the importance of your vote on those projects. That's all I have to say about this. I think we should really reconsider becoming a political body as opposed to what we actually are.
Commissioner Draculich, if I can just chime in. Commissioner Belto, thank you for that. I don't have the legalese for that, and you bring up, I guess, something I always inherently knew from my 4 years on this commission is impartiality. I read a staff report on Friday. I do my best to meet with applicants, express my concerns, ask questions, come to a meeting ready to hear fellow commissioners and staff and legal, help advise me to make the best decision I can. So thank you for bringing that forward, because I do not want to hurt the future of this board or this city with a decision as serious as a moratorium on any type of land use. So I don't support the land use. What I would say too is, when it comes to the issues being raised, which I respect everybody's public comment, is ultimately I look at the staff report, and for the previous data centers, Tumwa, they can deliver the water that's needed for that data center. NV Energy, or they're building a substation. Each data center is unique and different. And I could see how at times we may be concerned and not make the findings with certain data centers, and then many times we can, whether it's with or against the staff's approval. So I will not be supporting this resolution. Thank you, Commissioner Velto, and thank you all who have come here tonight to express your concerns.
Commissioner Becerra for the record. Don't want to unpack the whole thing, but I'll chime in a little bit and then let others respond. First, I do want to say that, though we disagree from time to time, tonight being obviously the latest example, I do want to share my utmost respect and appreciation for every single individual up here. I have had the privilege of getting to know every single person individually, and I know their heart's in the right place, and I think that's what makes this body pretty strong, is that we all bring a different perspective and strengths, and I appreciate that. So thank you, fellow commissioners so far who've chimed in, and look forward to hearing from others. I do want to touch on the whole judicial doodad topic and all that. I like to kind of keep things a bit more simple, just how I roll, but I do appreciate that perspective. We are a advisory body, recommending body, use another synonym if you will, but along those lines. And what's before us is just that. We are recommending for consideration a resolution for City Council to take a pause on issuing new data center permits. We're not mandating, we're not making policy, but we are advising as is part of our purview. And all of us, every single meeting, are required to be impartial. We make disclosures, sometimes we get eye rolls, sometimes we don't, for whatever reasons, right? But I do trust that we are impartial. If folks remember the last meeting, I was actually in favor of one data center and against another. I believe I can be impartial moving forward regardless of how tonight rolls, and I trust every single one of my commissioners to be impartial as well. So I'll pause there for a moment.
Commissioner Villanueva, I echo a lot of Commissioner Becerra's comments. I do appreciate the input from my fellow commissioners. I think it helps for a nice, diverse conversation. And as Commissioner Becerra stated, we are a review board, we're advisory. Ultimately, while we have the option to be the last stop, we are not necessarily the last stop. And so there's always options for the applicant to go to the next and final level, which is City Council. A resolution like this, I think, does not prohibit us from being able to be impartial to the facts or to the fact-finding process with regard to the law as it is presented today or at the time that we are reviewing an application. What this does do is allow us to provide some recommendations to council, recommend that council do a deeper dive into the considerations that we talked about that were mentioned during public comment: energy use, water use, biodiversity, so on and so forth. That does not mean that that's going to, that does not mean that I have bias going into the applications that come in front of me. As those who have seen me in meetings know, I'm do my best to be impartial and to look at the facts. That's one of the reasons I typically do not meet with applicants, because we are a quasi-judicial body and I do try and be unbiased. I allow both sides to present their argument equally and transparently here in front of the public. So by presenting this resolution to council, I don't believe that we would be creating any kind of bias or impacting due process rights or creating some eminent domain or taking issues. So that's my position. Thank you.
It's Commissioner Del Villar. And again, thank, as everybody's saying here, thank you all the commissioners. Thanks to you, Mike, and your team, and Jeff, who's been up here quite often, and everyone who's made public comments. Again, I don't feel like I'm here to make policy, and that's not what this is about. I am absolutely not opposed to data centers or growth of any kind in Reno. I just think it needs, that we need to take a look at it, as I feel like there's a lack of policy and guidelines to help me decide on whether, as they come to us individually, they make sense. There are different kinds of data centers. They use different kinds of energy. They use different kinds of cooling processes. So each of the data centers, let alone everything else that comes before us, should be looked at individually. But I think that, we're not the first city to go through this. We don't even have to recreate the wheel. There are other cities who do and have been through this process before, cities, counties, and states. And I think it's just putting a pause so that we can come up with some guidelines and policies that will help mitigate some of the issues that people have brought up here today. And I also feel like this should be, as is part of what Commissioner Becerra talked about, more strategic. Like, what does Reno want to see from data centers? Does Reno want to become, the beacon and the leader of data centers? And if so, we have to put something in place to help EDON and other folks bring in the right types of candidates and applicants. And also, I've mentioned many times, this other people have too, I am concerned about fire protection and our first responders and safety of our citizens. And I think that we just need to look at that. There are different types of fire suppression systems that go into data centers. There's different types of clusters, blades, batteries, servers, everything that's used in there. And I think that it would just behoove us to understand that a little better. And so that's all I'm asking for, is just a little more guidelines on what makes the most sense. So that's all I have.
I'll give comment, and then Commissioner Velto can respond. I find the number of people who showed up for issues of data centers impressive. The hours people have put into this topic is something that I've not seen in my 20 years of visiting this dais for planning-related issues. And that is important, and it is significant. We are talking about a recommendation for a resolution. This body is not judging or making a vote on a resolution. We don't have that purview. Thank you for reminding us. In my opinion, and I think how actually planning works, is that this is the job of Reno planning staff. Unfortunately, in our city, unlike other cities across America, and this is a criticism, I take that, is that we look to our council to give direction to staff to address these planning issues, so that the staff has time and money and the space that they need to do the kind of research it takes. That direction never took place here, and that is why, as a planning commission, a sort of quasi-body with expertise, we are asking for that kind of dedication of resources of staff to do the work that needs to be done. Also, in terms of impartiality, I voted twice to approve data centers based on the facts presented, the information that was provided, and the follow-up information. So I don't think that if Council decides a moratorium is inappropriate, that would limit my ability to make sound decisions going forward. I have high standards. I believe in having high standards for our city. This is an opportunity to do that in a way we haven't before. This is an unusual land use category that has no analogous use, and that there's considerable literature and scholarship around what makes good planning that has not been considered here. And that is strongly influencing my decision to support this. And energy and climate are generally the issues of our time. We happen to live in a geography with cheap energy and good climate. And so I don't want to give it all away at the expense of the longer good future of our city. Those are my positions. And so, Mr. Velto, please expand.
Yeah, I hear all of you saying that you would not be impartial when you are making future decisions on data centers. I believe you. I think you're being candid. It doesn't matter what either of us think, me or you. All that matters is what a future court looking at a record would think. And I want to illustrate this by giving a hypothetical. So I'm a labor and employment lawyer. I represent employees that have been discriminated against, and I fight for them to get their jobs back or get pay, right? Let's say that a developer in town had a bunch of conduct where they were discriminating against employees. And I were to come to the Planning Commission and I would propose a resolution that said, Acme developer, I don't like their discriminatory practices. I think we should pass a resolution that asks the city council to put a moratorium on approving any developments that this developer did. And city council ignores me. The very next time that that developer comes before this dais and asks for a land use decision, if I vote no, that developer, when they get to court, is going to be using that resolution I supported to say I was impartial. And that is very good evidence. So I respect all of your opinions. Obviously, you've all thought about this a lot. I respect that there are a lot of people here in support. I think that this deserves a discussion. I just disagree about how we do it because I'm concerned that the process will result in future decisions that are actually disadvantageous to what your goals are. And all I will say is that if there are future data centers that end up failing before this commission, do not be surprised if this is referenced in future cases where people are arguing that we were impartial. That's all I'm saying, is that I think I'm with you on the goal. I disagree with the process, and with that's where I'm at. But I appreciate the consideration, and I hope this is discussed later on. But we got to be really cautious what we do because it will be used against us.
Mr. Hall, could you chime in, please?
Well, I agree with Mr. Velto. Every time I make a statement, I support one side or the other, and if we end up in litigation, then everything that's on the record is going to be used by one side or the other. So, that's just the fact. In these cases, you have to look at the findings and have some facts to support your findings on the conditional use permits. With respect to this particular item, it's a recommendation to City Council. If you want to make a recommendation to City Council, then make a recommendation to City Council. And if I end up in litigation on a future data center, which I probably will, then we'll deal with it.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I just want to add some statements or response to Commissioner Valto as far as why I see where you're coming from. I still disagree, mainly because I've already voted no. I did 2 no votes and 1 abstention on data centers. If, potentially it could be that that impacts on the reasons why I voted no could be ultimately mitigated as a result, thereby allowing me to begin to vote yes moving forward if we can begin to address some of the needs for mitigation. Again, as I indicated previously, I have no qualms, I have no issues with data centers. My votes were based on the facts that were presented. I voted no. However, I have no issues with voting yes on data centers if we can actually make it more appealable if we can make the circumstances more appealing to allow me to vote yes moving forward. And that would actually be more, in the long run, advantageous to data centers, I think, if we can look at ways to mitigate and get me to a yes vote in the future. But the way things stand now, I've voted no even before the resolution was presented in front of me. Potentially, it could be that moving forward, I begin to vote yes. I don't know. I don't think that this is going to impact impartiality one way or the other. And as Mr. Hall mentioned, lawyers are lawyers. They're going to argue one way or the other. That's just the way it is.
Commissioner Becerra. Commissioner Velto, thank you. Always appreciate it. Mr. Hall as well, thank you. I was wondering, Velto, you mentioned that you disagree with what we're doing tonight, or the approach, right? The method, perhaps. But I was curious, in your mind, what would a better path look like? And is that something that you believe is going to happen anytime soon? If you don't know.
No, I know. The better path is to go to a neighborhood advisory board and bring this to council through that, because then it doesn't impair the impartiality of the Planning Commission and allows for us to rule on future data centers without this being used against us in the event of litigation. Or option B, going directly to a council person and getting them to sponsor a proposed resolution. Option C, pack the room at city council and do exactly the same thing without risking harming our ability to be impartial.
Oh, I appreciate that. Honestly, I think it's semantics at this point, because if this goes to NAB or, some other path, we're here. There's no taking this back.
I disagree. At this point, you have proposed a resolution for discussion.
Correct.
And you have not voted on a resolution which affirms your commitment to wanting a moratorium. Neither has anybody else in this commission. But the minute we do that, again, that's Exhibit A.
Okay, then I think there's nuance, right? You're saying proposing a moratorium. And in my little deck here, I've been very intentional about actually highlighting that this is a temporary pause. And I'm going to read some of the language, because this isn't like a moratorium forever. I do come from the private side where we move fast, and I think I've shown that's I have a bias for action. So we're not talking about crippling our city. If anything, we want to find out how we can actually make our city more lively and treat our city like a sustainable business, because right now we're in the red, and obviously we're not doing that, right? So let me just read a little bit about it so people understand what we're proposing here. I blank that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution encouraging the Reno City Council to consider a temporary pause on the filing and issuance of new permits for data centers. This pause will direct and allow the city to study the economic, environmental, and community impacts of data centers, engage stakeholders, and develop a framework for ensuring that future approvals align with the Reno Master Plan's goals for sustainability, economic growth, quality of life, and other relevant metrics as identified by stakeholders. Additionally, we would propose that we invite stakeholders like EDON, TMRPA, RSIC, utility providers, workforce development leaders, state-level partners, and the broader public to participate in shaping this framework, ensuring that future projects bring clear and measurable benefits to Reno's residents and economy. And I'm out of breath. Folks can read the rest, but I don't see anything wrong with that, but the language doesn't have to stay that way. And as the other commissioners mentioned, I can be impartial. Like I can look at the facts for anything brought before us and either say yay, nay, and defend that.
I believe you.
Yeah.
And here's the reality. It's just, I'm concerned we are shooting ourselves in the foot, because when a future data center comes in, let's say this resolution passes and city council decides not to act. We would be shooting ourselves in the foot. The minute we genuinely want to vote against a data center because there are problems with its compliance with the master plan, the code, something, we are giving them an out when they go to district court by passing a resolution now. Now, the alternative that I think is more appropriate is to go through NAB, go through council member, go through public comment. That removes that tool that a data center would have in the event that we, on the facts, impartially decided on a case-by-case basis, this is problematic. I don't want to be here a year later, 2 years later, where we denied a project and we find out that there's a district court judge that grants a petition for judicial review, reversing the action because it determined that there was an unfair hearing at the Planning Commission because there was a resolution passed by them that predetermined their decision. That's my concern.
I understand that, but Commissioner Becerra, for the record, but this also assumes that there's a lot of assumptions there, right? That we would pass something here and it wouldn't get supported at City Council for whatever reason. That's the nuance I'm reading here. And so now it's Planning Commission, perhaps as a body, that is somehow say no to future projects, which again, I appreciate that cautiousness, but I trust that we have a viable path forward and that everyone can be fair in evaluating future projects. And I don't want to be here a year from now, 2 years from now, what we've been dealing with in the last 2 months, right? For both applicants or for all applicants, residents, staff, and so forth. I would have a question for Mr. Mike do we have any other data centers? You don't have to obviously mention them, but are there any others filed under the current administrative interpretation that might be before us 2 weeks from now, 6 months from now, and so forth?
No, we do not.
Amen.
I hope you're correct.
Sorry.
Sorry, Commissioner Draculich.
Sorry, do you mind if I chime in? Is that okay?
Yes?
Thank you. This question is for Mike. Mike, is there any appetite that we haven't seen from council or from staff to engage with the moratorium on data centers? Is there anything we're missing?
The council has requested the staff put together a staff report to potentially initiate a text amendment to the code to further address data centers, but at this point, we do not have any formal direction. That meeting will occur on the 26th, and that's where we will take any direction that the council kind of sends our way, so to speak.
Okay, good. And I ask one because I've been wanting to hear more communication with council or staff, and I'm with everybody here wanting to fact find. What I'm seeing with this resolution is it feels very performative because that's going to go up to the council. If I have no reason to believe that, that's going to get passed, then why pass something that's just going to shoot ourselves in the foot, as Commissioner Velto is saying, when we know it's not going to pass up there. Once again, just kind of hammering the point home, this feels performative. I'd rather see some of this verbiage feel more cohesive and safer for all of us moving forward for the legal aspects. Commissioner Becerra, the part that kind of catches me is now therefore being resolved by the Reno Planning Commission. Item 1 and A, the City Council is encouraged to adopt a moratorium suspending the filing and issuance of permits for data centers for the purpose of understanding through studies. So it doesn't have any date certain or anything. What does that really mean? What message are we sending even with that? Is it 6 months? Are we waiting for EDON and NV Energy? And what is that? So I don't love the verbiage. I don't support the resolution in general. But once again, I just kind of feel like this is performative at this point, and now we have legal issues if we take this action. Thank you.
I want to make a comment to the 40 or so people in this room that this is not a performative exercise, and thank you for your time.
And Commissioner Becerra, thank you, Commissioner Draculich. Not sure what language you're reading. I know the latest one before us, at least here on the screen, does have a time certain mention. And I would add too that, again, this is just a recommendation, right? I fully believe that whatever we bubble up, if we do decide as a body to pass something this evening, that it wouldn't stay identical to how we propose it. I actually demand or expect further deliberation at the city council level with further public input and other stakeholder input so that language gets finessed, right? Again, this is a recommendation just to kind of get things going. Because if we don't, I'm just afraid that we're going to have these same conversations over and over again. And that's not good use of our resources, people-wise, judicial, money, whatever else, and I just feel like Commissioner Rohrmeyer mentioned, this is by no means performative. This is actually part of our duty and responsibilities.
Yeah, and Commissioner Draculich, I don't mean that in a condescending manner. What I mean is I don't believe this is there's no appetite for this at the next level, so now we're taking a risk, as Commissioner Velto is stating, for something that we're pushing it through just to put ourselves in jeopardy. I always appreciate public comment. I listen to every single word. I feel like there's a better avenue. Commissioner Velto's kind of struck that chord for me, and continue the public conversation. And I get it. You probably feel like we're going to spin our wheels and not get what you need. Luckily, there's no data centers coming up anytime soon, so there's that. They were kind of crammed at us, starting in December with 3. So I get that. I had my concerns as well, but once again, I'm just not comfortable with this, and things are at stake for that.
Can I say something here? I think my concern is, if our concern is we want the city to have better code that helps us understand how to evaluate data centers, why isn't the resolution we request the city council consider code cleanup with regard to data centers. That in my mind would avoid a lot of my concerns because it wouldn't be a policy stance about a type of land use. It would be more of a help us do our job better. And that aligns, I think, more with my understanding of 278. So why is that not the angle? Because I do think that would avoid some of my concerns.
Sure, I'll try and let others kind of chime in as well. It could be, I mean, if supporting staff wouldn't mind putting my proposed motion back on the screen. I guess it's back here at the very top, open to refinement. So however you want that language to look like, and if everyone else is on board, totally, we can get down with that. But I think what's missing here is that there's a lack of ownership. If we've been here for 2 months now, where is that feedback loop closing? City Council knows that this has been a struggle. Why isn't it before us already? So we are taking ownership. Again, within our purview, we're not going out of bounds, like we're just recommending.
I understand what you're saying, but I think if I would feel a lot more comfortable about this from both a planning commission perspective, and it's really hard for me to take my lawyer hat off, from a liability perspective, if we were just asking if city council would consider looking at the code to make it so we have some extra guidance. I'd feel way more comfortable with that. And I think that's more consistent with our job.
I believe we've been asking for 2 months for that very thing.
I agree. I know Commissioner Romeyer and myself, when staff presented Title 19, the last time prior to the reading in front of council, we asked specifically about data centers, and we gave recommendations, which to my recollection were never actually presented to the council.
Well, we could pass, I still think resolutions are outside of our purview, but we could pass a resolution asking for code modifications to help us better evaluate data centers, period. That, in my mind, avoids the issue of liability, gives it to city council for them to consider if they're interested, and does not affect our impartiality as a commission, which allows for us to evaluate data centers impartially in the future. I think that is more reasonable, or we have asked and city council has not cared, in which case we are really shooting ourselves in the foot if they don't do anything about this. So my suggestion would be, if we're going to do this, we heavily limit it to make it confined to, please look at code, and we want to be able to make decisions more in line with more clear guidelines. And get away from the policy aspect, because it's the policy aspect that I think really gets us in trouble. Because the policy aspect, that'll be there at council. The minute this goes there, very limited, everyone in this room is probably going to be there talking about policy. We don't need that to be in the resolution. It only does harm to the commission. But everyone in this room is going to be there again talking about it.
Commissioner Becerra, for the record. Oh, I'm sorry.
I want to make one clarification on a previous statement. When you said, do we have any data centers currently under review? Not that will come before this board. I want to clarify that the Apadan data center that was denied has been appealed to the city council and will be heard by the city council in March. So I just want to clarify that there's no data centers currently under review that will come back to this board.
Great, thank you, Mike. Commissioner Becerra, for the record again, see if I can gather myself here. My understanding, Commissioner Velto, and maybe Mike can clarify too, is that from what you stated earlier, City Council is going to be reviewing text amendments, but it's not clear what those text amendments would satisfy. So maybe my question to you, if you're an oracle or if you know through conversations of the sort, do those text amendments actually seek to satisfy the ask tonight, which is a comprehensive framework to address the pain points we've been experiencing and asking for the last 2 months?
The short answer is I don't know.
Yeah.
So the city council at the meeting, the last meeting during the code update, the subject of data centers was brought up, and that there was a desire to have further discussion about data centers, which is why it's coming back for the potential to do a text amendment to make modifications to the code. Regardless, everything that has occurred here tonight is obviously public record, will be included with that staff report. So regardless of what happens tonight, all the discussion that has taken place tonight will be presented to the City Council.
Great, thank you so much. And Kelly and crew, would you mind going to the last slide? There's actually one more at the end.
May I make a comment in regards to expanding upon what Commissioner Velto said? I also would support a resolution or recommendation to have a text amendment, but on the premise that it comes back to Planning Commission before it goes to City Council. Because I've historically seen things that get presented to City Council lack maybe the expansive understanding of what good planning around data centers or other topics could look like.
Sorry, the portion about like us, about it coming back before it goes back to council, I just don't know if that's something that we can.
I guess if we're making recommendations for ordinance creation, I guess we can make a recommendation that it comes back to Planning Commission.
Is that possible? I don't know.
Mr. Hall, feel free to chime in if I'm misstating anything, but I think that could obviously be part of your recommendation, but ultimately it would be a council decision whether that would come back before this board.
Understood.
I agree.
Great. Commissioner Becerra, for the record, I asked staff to put up my last slide. Actually, it was kind of a nice thank you to everyone. At the very bottom, little hashtag one team. I truly believe that. I'm not naive to, the inner workings of city life and how Reno works and all that jazz. But I do believe that whatever we pass tonight, if anything, that we are in it together, even with disagreeing opinions or viewpoints. I still stand with the original motion or the intent of the motion, totally open for the language to change as well, so it satisfies a level of comfort, but still doesn't lose the essence of what's before us tonight.
Thank you. I think we're probably we have a lot of differing opinions perhaps, or shades of what this could look like. Do we want to just kind of go one by one and say, some people have said nay, or indicated that they would say nay. Do we want to clarify what we're comfortable with individually? Okay.
Commissioner Villanueva, I'm comfortable with the resolution as written, so I guess if others have changes, then they can share those, but as it's written, I'm comfortable with it.
Commissioner Del Villar, I am comfortable with it as is, but to your point, if there's different language that we can incorporate tonight, I don't know the process, but I'd be open to that as well.
Quick question. So council is considering code cleanup on this. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact item. What are they considering?
They will be considering a potential text amendment, whether to initiate a text amendment to the code to further address data centers at their meeting on the 26th of February.
So I guess I would be I still am very concerned about us doing resolutions, and I just want to make that very clear. In the interest of compromise, I would be in support of a recommendation to council that if they proceed with a text amendment, we would get a chance to review that text amendment. So I don't know how that would be phrased, but a request that we get a chance to look at the text amendment in the event they decide to make a text amendment. Anything beyond that is policy focused, I don't think we're thinking about the unintended consequences, and that's why I'm very concerned about it.
Commissioner Becerra, thank you. Commissioner Velto, honestly, thank you for being open for compromise there. I think it's just nuance here. I'm not sure how text amendments is not policy. as much as how you're trying to refer to this resolution. ADUs are before the city council these days, and they're getting a good little road show, of public input and so forth, which is phenomenal. This deserves no less. This did not get that level of treatment. We're just trying to not, do harm here, and I get that where your cautiousness comes from, but I think we're trying to help pick up the balls that were, I would say, inadvertently dropped, if I'm giving benefit of the doubt. So I'll leave it at that, and happy. I was going to ask this too, since folks are tired, and we do have a few other items before us. Maybe vice chair and chair and staff, would you all be open to tabling this till the end so we can get through the 3 items and then come back to this, or do you just want to knock it out now?
I prefer we
We're gonna finish.
knock it out, just for the benefit of the people here.
Okay.
As much as you want to hear other public hearings, I'm sure.
Sure.
You want a decision?
We're gonna wrap this up. So I guess the others have weighed or been forthcoming. I can support the resolution as written. I can also support a text amendment. If city council doesn't support a text amendment, we're going to be going through this on a one-off basis every single time, which nobody benefits from. But I would strongly support a resolution that brings, or a recommendation that brings it back to the Planning Commission first and foremost. So I can support either of those things. I'll look to a motion in a second to drive which direction we go.
So just for clarification, Commissioner Romeyer, so your recommendation is that the text amendment comes back before the Planning Commission before it goes to City Council for your input?
Correct.
And so that would be the resolution?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we had a record on that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Dracula, just for clarity, I guess I want to understand what a motion would be from Commissioner Velto. His opinion and notes on this matter very heavily, so I just want clarity there. I don't support the resolution in its current form.
I would support a recommendation that a text amendment from council come back to Planning Commission before it goes to council, if council agrees. Like a recommendation, I would support that. Again, because I don't think it's policy-based.
And did that eliminate what was brought to us tonight with the resolution? Or is it included with couple?
My support of it would not include the resolution as presented.
Okay.
Mr. Hall, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe any text amendment initiated by council to Title 18 would actually come back before the Planning Commission prior to be final adoption by the City Council.
Right. That's my understanding, yes. So you'd have input on that, yes.
May I? Yes, please. Commissioner Villanueva, I, like Commissioner Becerra, don't really see the difference between us reviewing a text amendment and us proposing this resolution. Either way, we're providing feedback to the council. That's really all this is just sharing feedback with the council regarding our, kind of what we'd like to see moving forward. It doesn't really say how we're going to rule on future applications, what we expect to see from future applications. Just like with the text amendment, we see those anyways. They come in front of us. We provide our feedback. I know when we got the text cleanup, I provided feedback regarding parking lots. That didn't mean that whenever someone came in front of me with a proposed parking lot, I was going to rule against it. It's feedback. It's considerations for the future. And I think that's what this is. So I don't really understand the nuance there either.
No, I appreciate that. And I would say that, we maybe have had some examples of this, sign codes and various other larger text amendments. We give feedback. It doesn't seem to get incorporated. So if there's a way that we can have a real substantial input on these text amendments, then that would be, I think, a very nice alternative to the resolution. But I'm perfectly comfortable with the resolution as written as well.
So, Commissioner Becerra here, I'll just, if I may, call for the vote, and I'll put forth a motion. And we'll go from there if that sounds good. All right. Buckle up, Belto.
You got to read it really fast, though.
No, this one's going to be the shortened version for brevity's sake, but again, if folks want to finesse it a little bit, I'm okay with that. I move that the Planning Commission adopt a resolution encouraging the Reno City Council to consider a temporary pause on the filing and issuance of new permits for data centers as presented and filed with the Secretary of Record for this evening's public hearing.
Commissioner Villanueva, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No, for the reasons I stated earlier.
Commissioner Draculich, I'm sorry.
I said no as well, just in unison.
Okay. Recommendation for a resolution for a moratorium on data centers has passed. Thank you all. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Any conversations are welcome in the lobby, and we're going to get back to our public hearings. Moving to item 6.1, the Arnett Storage Building, CUP. First, we'll start with a presentation from staff.
All right. Good evening, Planning Commission. Jeff Foster, Associate Planner for the record. The first case that I'm bringing you tonight is the Arnett Storage Building, LDC 25-34. Do we not have power in our little, maybe that's out of power? We'll try it. There we go. Okay. All right, so this project is about 1.27 acres. It is located about 80 feet southeast of the intersection of Sutro Street and Sun Villa between McCarran Boulevard and Highway 395, as you can see here. It is developed with an existing non-conforming 9,750 square foot warehouse building. The building was built in 1987 and was previously used by Precision Sheet Metal to manufacture metal chassis for the slot machine industry. Several years ago, Precision moved their fabrication facility to a different location and currently use the building only for storage. Due to their business demands, they now require additional storage space. Non-residential development adjacent to residentially zoned property requires approval of a site plan review, as you know. Indoor manufacturing, processing, assembly, or fabrication is not an allowed use in the MF21 zone. Per RMC, no non-conforming use shall be enlarged, extended, or changed to a different non-conforming use unless an application for a conditional use permit has first been approved. As a result, the entire application was elevated to a CUP. As we zoom in here, I want to call your attention to the surrounding land uses. You can see that to the north, there's a religious assembly use. There is a non-conforming mini warehouse use to the east. To the south, you have additional non-conforming industrial buildings and uses. And then to the west, you have multifamily residential across Sutro Street. The key issues that staff analyzed are compatibility with surrounding land uses as well as site design. The zoning is multifamily residential, 21 units per acre, MF21, and the master plan land use is suburban mixed use. In terms of compatibility with surrounding land uses, the surrounding land uses on two sides are industrial in nature, and the adjacent multifamily use across Sutro is separated from the project site by a road, Sutro Street. The proposed building is located on the southeast corner in that area shown there. That's about 230 feet from Sutro and about 360 feet from the closest multifamily building. The project includes minimal exterior lighting, which is directed downward and used only when necessary. The structure will only be occupied when materials are actively being stored or removed, and it will not include nighttime activity. Staff has recommended restricted construction hours that will reduce potential impacts on the existing multifamily across Sutro, and that's condition number 5. Given all of the above, the proposed use is generally compatible with the existing land uses in the area. Moving on to site design, the project proposes a new 24-foot tall, single-story, approximately 2,640 square foot metal storage building with 2 exterior lights. That proposed site lighting meets code and no lighting is directed onto adjacent properties. The site contains no formal landscaping, yet the MF21 zone requires a minimum landscape amount of at least 20%. Since the site does not comply with landscaping standards, it must be brought up to code. Per RMC, when an existing site or use that does not comply is expanded, landscaping shall be provided in an amount that is proportionate to the expansion. Preference shall be given to installing landscaping along public streets and other highly visible areas. The applicant is therefore proposing approximately 2,100 square feet of landscaping based on that proportional expansion, including a minimum of 8 trees and 48 shrubs as required by code. And that landscaping will be concentrated in 2 areas near Sutro where the existing paving will need to be removed, and all of that is in condition number 6. Here are the recommended findings for a conditional use permit. Staff can make all recommended findings. Here's a separate set of findings for the non-conforming use as required by code. Again, staff can make all recommended findings. And here's the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions. And the applicant is here, but they will not be making a presentation. They're just available for questions.
All right, thank you. We'll go to commissioners for disclosures, starting with Commissioner Becerra.
Read and reviewed materials, and I am very familiar with the site.
Commissioner Villanueva, no disclosures.
Commissioner Del Villar, I have read and reviewed the information, and I also went by the site, and I also spoke to folks in the church above.
Commissioner Velto, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Draculich
Familiar with the site.
and Commissioner Rohrmeyer, same disclosures. We do not have a presentation for the applicant, so we will go to public comment. Did we receive any public comment on this item?
We did not receive any correspondence for this item.
Okay, anybody in chambers wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and go to questions from the commissioners.
Commissioner Villanueva, I have a question. May you explain to me can you discuss for me the non-conforming component of this application? Because I'm looking at, request conditional use permit to allow for the expansion of non-conforming indoor manufacturing, processing, assembly. So what is this zone, like what would the zoning be? Would it be manufacturing? Go ahead.
So the zone is, Jeff Foster, Associate Planner, the zone is multifamily 21. And so the existing use is non-conforming because a warehouse is not an allowed use in the MF 21 zone. So by proposing to expand the existing non-conforming use, that expansion of a non-conforming use is what code requires to be reviewed through a conditional use permit.
Okay, so it's a warehouse that's expanding to a manufacturing processing?
So it's just to add an additional warehouse building.
Oh, to expand the space
Yeah,
that it
it's
occupies?
literally, it's not necessarily expanding the use so much as expanding the physical space for the use that's already there.
Okay, so it's obviously, I guess, grandfathered, so to speak, into that non-conforming state. And then and the conditional use is required because it's expanding, is that?
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
Commissioner Del Villar, it's not really a question. I think it was answered with the condition number 5, how you explained it. As I mentioned, I did go to the church up above, and they have, it's like a daycare. I'm not really sure. I can't tell how old kids are anymore. But I just wanted to make sure that the construction hours, that they were made aware that there might be kids being dropped off. But I think you've covered that with a residential timeframe anyway, so I think I'm good. And they had no problem with the folks that are there and expansion and everything, so I'm good.
Commissioner Velto, did you have questions? Okay. Commissioner Draculich, did you have questions?
No, thank you.
Okay.
I have another question. Jeff, question regarding, so I'm looking here, it says, so it was warehouse, it was used for precision sheet metal to fabricate metal for the slot machine industry, and then it says it's no longer being used for that, it's just storage. Is that, so warehouse, so storage is suitable for a warehouse category, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is manufacturing suitable for a warehouse category?
So even if the existing use was currently still manufacturing, even that use would be non-conforming in the MF 21 zone. So whether it's being currently used as a warehouse or whether it's being used as manufacturing is essentially irrelevant in terms of what we're looking at. They're both non-conforming uses. Adding another building to do either one of those uses would still be an expansion of a non-conforming use and therefore trigger the CUP.
Okay, and then have you gotten any feedback from folks in the area.
Not an
Okay.
iota, no.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions? Any interest in discussion? I'll take a motion.
Commissioner, Commissioner Becerra for the record. In the matter of case LDC 25-00034, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report. And I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Del Villar, I second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, project is approved. Good luck with your project. All right, moving to case 6.2 here, rocket batteries. Well, Jeff, are you up again?
I'm up again,
Great.
and I'm not Leah Picotti. Okay, so Jeff Foster, Associate Planner, on behalf of Leah Picotti, bringing you LDC 25-29, rocket batteries. So this site is about 1.03 acres, and it is on the north side of Mill Street near the intersection with Gregg Street, adjacent to the GSR Aqua Range. And I didn't know what that was called, but I looked it up, and sure enough, the Aqua Range. And the request before you tonight is a conditional use permit for a warehouse and distribution center within an existing building, and we'll get further into that. So, as we zoom in here, I wanted to call out the existing uses surrounding the project site, which are partly masked by the zoning slide. Nevertheless, you have a warehouse and distribution center to the west. You have indoor recreation and personal services to the east, a convenience store, gas station, an indoor recreation studio, and an industrial supply company to the south across Mill Street. And then again, the Aqua Range to the north. The zoning on the north side of the street, as you can see, is mixed-use urban, and to the south across Mill Street is a combination of industrial, commercial, and mixed employment. The nearest residential zoning district is on the other side of the freeway, approximately half a mile west of the site. Key issues that Leah analyzed are compatibility with surrounding uses and traffic access and circulation. So a little bit of background, here's a picture of the site. The site has been permitted as a warehouse for at least 25 years, dating back to at least the 1990s. Over the last couple years, 2023 to 2024, the overall site underwent a series of parking and facade improvements that you may have noticed when you've driven by that site. They certainly have given it a facelift. Also in 2024, the 12-month, there was a 12-month lapse in the use. It was actually 16 months. And because of that lapse in use of over 12 months, it requires a conditional use permit to reestablish the use. So as we move on to the main issue of the night for this particular project, traffic access and circulation, the Mill Street widening project will obtain additional right-of-way at the site frontage, which will result in a reduction of space between the loading dock and the right-of-way, potentially resulting in traffic obstruction. Condition number 5 therefore limits the length of trucks using the loading dock to 30 feet. Trucks longer than 30 feet will be loaded and unloaded from the adjacent alleyway, and all turning maneuvers will be made on-site, ensuring that there are no traffic obstructions into the Mill Street right-of-way. Here are the recommended conditional use permit findings, and staff can make all the recommended findings, and here's the recommended motion.
Do we have a presentation from the applicant tonight?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll go to commissioner disclosures.
Who do you want to start with?
Oh, let's start with you, Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Valto, familiar with the site. I think that's it.
Commissioner Del Villar, familiar with the site and spoke to company representatives.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, familiar with the site?
Commissioner Villanueva, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Becerra, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Draculich, familiar with the site.
Okay, let's go to public comment. Did we receive any public comment on this item?
We have no correspondence for this item.
Okay. Anybody in chambers wishing to speak? Okay, closing public comment. Going to questions from the commission. Oh, I'm sorry, please come up. Just make sure you fill out a comment card.
My name is Philip Fleischman. I just have one regard. If this is battery storage, has it been taken into consideration that they have some type of containment in case these batteries leak? For two main reasons. One is proximity to the river, and two is proximity to that big, huge pond, which I don't know if it's going to be replaced, that the old MGM placed. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Closing public comment. And now questions for staff. Jeff, do you mind coming up? Why don't we start with the questions that were just posed?
So there was nothing in the staff report on the battery storage. I would just submit that the applicant is here and they might be able to address in terms of kind of containment and how their operation works. There was nothing in the staff report specifically on that issue. However, the agencies all had a chance to comment and, as to my knowledge, did not.
That's correct. If I can interject, Mike Riley, for the record, the Reno Fire Department and Environmental Services are both reviewing agencies of this application, as well as the Health Department, and nobody had any recommended conditions of approval.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions?
Commissioner Becerra, just one question. Jeff, you mentioned that the length of the vehicle or the 18-wheeler was shortened down to 30 feet. Is that correct?
Correct.
Just for visual, does that take the vehicle to like the curb, the new curb after Mill Street's widened? Or is there a little bit of a setback there? Or how about this? Do you feel comfortable with how long that truck's going to be and the amount of space between the vehicle and pedestrians and anything else that needs to be walking in front of that vehicle?
In Leah's absence, Jeff is pinch hitting for Leah tonight, who had another commitment, so I'll cover. That condition was closely coordinated with RTC and the widening to ensure that very scenario, that there would be safe pedestrian circulation along Mill Street, and that no trucks would be extending into the right-of-way or blocking pedestrian circulation.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I think that's all the questions I have.
Any other questions?
Yes, I do. And actually, it reminded me, I should have disclosed it. I did read the environmental control memorandum. And I think this was maybe on there. Sorry, give me just a second.
I have a question. Commissioner Del Villar, I think, I'm not sure, Jeff, if you'll know, but my understanding is this warehouse has been there. It's been a battery. The batteries have been there for I don't know how long. But this is just because it lapsed, and that's why we're going through this process again. But nothing's really changed with what it's been for.
So it's been a warehouse for at least 25 years, and the immediate warehouse used prior to Rocket Batteries occupying the site was a furniture storage delivery type of business, is my recollection.
Mm-hmm.
But Rocket Batteries has been on the site since last year. 2023 or last year, just last year?
About 8 months.
Okay, so going back into 2024, Rocket Batteries has been on the site, and we're bringing them into compliance through the business license and CUP review process.
Perfect. Thank you, Jeff.
And Commissioner Villanueva, so no, I was wrong. This one was not one of the ones that was in the memorandum, environmental control memorandum.
Any other questions? Any discussion from the commissioners? Take a motion.
Oh, there it is. Commissioner Del Villar, in the matter of case LDC 25-000-00029, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the conditional use permit subject to the conditions listed in the staff report.
Commissioner Becerra, I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Case passes unanimously. Congratulations. All right, moving on to the Cornelius fence height deviation. Carter.
Good evening, Commission. Carter Williams, Associate Planner for the record. Before you tonight is a major deviation for a residential fence to increase the height in a front yard. The property is located on the southwest corner of Rose Hill Court and Miraloma Drive. The specific request is to go from 4 to 6 feet in the secondary front yard. This is a corner lot. Effectively, the master plan designation is single-family neighborhood, and the zoning district is single-family residential at 3 units per acre. The front yard fences within the front yard, generally across the city, are limited to 4 feet in height. On a special case for corner lots allows for fences to go up to 6 feet, but it must maintain at least a 5-foot setback with landscaping from the back of sidewalk. So regarding this deviation request, the scope is limited to the frontage along Rose Hill Court, not Miraloma. So the area in red would not be impacted. This any fence positioned in that location would have to be 4 feet or less. This is a request that would allow for a 6-foot fence to appear in that orange area. From a urban design perspective, this is a good thing in code generally that we look for to kind of reduce that tunneling effect, to increase the perception of public safety along sidewalks. But in this case, the applicant has provided evidence that their situation is a little unique, that they have specific slope or site conditions that elevation changes up against that sidewalk that makes it challenging to install a fence. The fence itself right now needs to be replaced as it stands. And the specific area where landscaping would be required is challenging to install generally as well. So from staff's perspective, we're looking at the potential for erosion being improved by moving this fence up to the sidewalk. It improves the capacity for maintenance in this area as debris can collect against that fence in this downslope. And the other result of this would allow the property owner on the other side of the fence to improve their own site drainage, which is right now potentially impacted by the location of the existing fence. On the screen are the findings for a major deviation. Generally, we're looking at whether it has any impact on surrounding properties. It cannot constitute a special privilege, and in this case, I think there's reasonable site conditions that warrant it. And it can't be materially detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare, and staff's reviewed all of that. I would also note that neighboring property owners have submitted letters of approval, and those have been attached to the staff report. On the screen is the recommended motion, and I'm available for questions. The applicant does not have a presentation, but they would like to introduce themselves. And
Good evening, Commission. This is my wife, Leslie, and I, Paul. We're just here to obviously get our fence. We want to get to a point where we just would like to have a little bit more privacy, and the fence needs to be replaced. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
We'll go to commissioners for disclosures, starting with Commissioner Velto.
Commissioner Velto, no disclosures.
Commissioner Del Villar, no disclosures.
Commissioner Rohrmeyer, no disclosures.
Commissioner Villanueva, I read emails.
Commissioner Becerra, familiar with the site.
Commissioner Draculich, no disclosures.
Okay. With that, we'll go to public comment. I've received a comment card from Phil Fleischman.
Good evening, Commission members. I'm proud to say that I'm a native Nevadan, one of the few that are here anymore. I'm also a long-term resident of Hidden Valley. Now, a couple of things that I would like to address is I don't know why so many people that move into our area want to change everything that's already there. So per Reno Municipal Code on fences and walls, I won't give you that code number, I don't think you need it. Let me refresh your mind. The regulation purpose statement includes these statements regarding fences. They're to enhance the visual appearance of the built environment in the city, to establish an attractive streetscape, ensure visual compatibility with public spaces, promote street and neighborhood character. So per this code and my discussion with the building department, a 6-foot tall fence does need to be set back at least 5 feet. This proposed fence blocks the panoramic view and the view of Mount Rose. There's no space for trees or shrubs. There's no greenscaping between the fence and the street. Just an unattractive wooden fence and a concrete wall. It creates a claustrophobic feeling by bringing the fences in so close. More importantly, it creates a less inviting, less desirable area, reducing property values for the entire community. It creates a safety hazard. Minor hazards are people walking down the street. You're going to brush against the fence and get slivers in your shoulder or your arm. But it will also shade the sidewalk, allowing snow and ice to build up, which will cause a fall hazard. More importantly, the major hazard is it reduces the view of the street and the intersection. Now, what you can't quite tell from his photos, and I apologize, I also had a photo demonstration, but I didn't think I would have time to let you all view that. This is a pretty steep court. If you put a child on a bicycle, a toddler, and they're riding down that hill, they're going to shoot right down into the intersection. If I can see them coming, I have a chance to stop. But if you make this narrow claustrophobic view, there's a good chance that child is going to die, resulting in a wrongful death lawsuit against the homeowner and possibly the city for allowing this deviation. So this deviation will result in lower home values, reduced taxes, and reduced income for the city and county. It sets a precedence for other people to do the same. This offense was apparently built with no permit near the subdivision entrance, and it removes an established attractive streetscape. In closing, it will have a negative impact on aesthetics, safety, city and county revenue, as well as liability. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment? Anybody online wishing to speak?
I do not have any more cards, and no one online has their hand raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment and go to questions. Commission staff.
I have questions?
Yes, questions.
Questions?
Let's do it.
Yes, question for staff. Sorry, I was.
It's been a long night.
Bueller?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to understand. I'm kind of looking at the map on like the like yellow guy on Google Maps who walks around. So we're talking about a fence that is on Rose Hill Court, and across the street there's just a fence, right? Like we're talking about that fence on the side of the.
Correct, yes.
And are they trying to build a new fence?
So currently there is an existing fence that needs to be replaced.
Gotcha.
So they are in the process of building a new fence, and unfortunately they did not get permitted ahead of time. So they are coming into compliance with.
Understood.
Yeah.
Okay. And the fence, it looks like there's a steep slope. So they are required, even with the steep slope, to then have a 4-foot fence. Does that account for the slope?
So they can put up a 4-foot fence up to the sidewalk. That would be allowed by right today. But there are, but yes, otherwise, in order to put up a 6-foot fence, regardless of the slope, the code right now would require a 5-foot setback off, which puts it on the slope in this moment.
And on the other side of the street, it's just another fence, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that middle picture, may I ask, that's showing a wooden fence, is that on the sidewalk?
So there is an existing fence on the neighbor directly across the street. It was not permitted to our knowledge, right? I guess it's not permitted. The city has no record of permits for that one. So
It looks like a 6-foot fence.
it is a
across the
6-foot
street.
fence on the sidewalk, yes. We are complaint-based compliance, so.
I'm not asking you to go after them. I'm just trying
What I'm saying is that it's a situation where there's across the city, I'll speak like this, there are situations where fences are installed without permits, and then this is the scenario here and in other places, even in this neighborhood.
So did this applicant get cited and that's why they came to the city?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, understood. Okay, I think those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Sure, Commissioner Becerra. I don't know if it's a question or a statement, but I do remember we had a case before us some months back last year in Old Southwest, and they wanted to deviate something similar, and I understand and appreciate that. It's always not fun, perhaps, getting your hand caught in the cookie jar, but I think we're in the business of trying to help people find some path forward. I do appreciate the concerns shared tonight, but I would love to find a path forward for these folks. That's all I had to say.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think I heard the applicant say, I think part of it is the privacy. So does that eliminate the idea of a fence that maybe was allowed for the visual of the mountain? And
So you can kind of see what they're referring to right here, where the sidewalk level, and this is a good place to scale, is that you can actually see over this 6-foot fence at where it's on the slope. From staff's perspective, we don't have any real policies related, or master plan policies or otherwise related to privacy, but it is a condition that is being created with the fence being located 5 feet away.
Well, no, it just seemed like that was what was important to the applicant, was they were doing it for privacy. The 6-foot was for privacy. So if I understand this correctly, the code is 4 feet, is that right? Across the board, if they're going to go up to the sidewalk, 4 feet is what code provides for? Is that accurate?
Correct, yes.
Okay. And then the folks across the street, they obviously are not in compliance because you said it was 6 foot across the street. So it's not like I can say, oh, well, they have it, so we need to allow it here. You're telling me that they're not in compliance either?
And I'll clarify too that the code actually is explicit that we cannot use existing nonconformities to justify the approval of this. So so staff's analysis is strictly on the condition of the slope, what it does to the fence over time, and increased maintenance costs. And for that matter, we've analyzed all the safety factors with the intersection on Mira Loma. But this isn't blocking views. That's a standard across the board for any fence.
Okay.
We analyze that, so.
Okay. All right.
I'm just ready for discussion.
Commissioner Del Villar, and maybe this is a question for the applicants, and maybe it's getting to what Commissioner Villanueva was trying to get to. Would you consider, like a 5-foot fence or a 4-foot fence, or is it just, if you don't mind? And then also, I can't really tell from these pictures, the property across the street, it looks like it has the see-through fence towards the intersection. And I can't tell if this has that, because that might answer some of the safety concerns that the person brought up.
Well, I'll answer the second part.
Perfect.
That
Thank you.
the fence line stops at the front face of the house. So
okay,
if you
I
look
got
at
it.
this,
Yep.
this would
Perfect.
be where it would stop.
Okay.
Which actually, this is interesting because when I visited the site, a vehicle is entirely forward of where the fence is being proposed to stop. So this area is not impacted by fencing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, could you restate that question?
Oh, sure, I'm just kind of curious if, anywhere between 4 and 6 would have worked, or is it just I get the privacy.
The picture that you showed there, that is about 4 feet. So, but basically, if we put the fence back exactly where it's at the 5 feet, you can actually see over the top of the fence, and that's what my wife is in the picture right there, showing the one that's center there. You can actually just see right into the fence. That's why we wanted to move it up to the 6 foot there.
I understand. Okay.
And then this gentleman said about the safety thing, that is about, like I said, about a 6-foot drop from where she's standing down to the bottom of the hole. So if a kid is rolling down the thing and hits that, it's going to hit the fence. He's going to get a lot more hurt than rolling down into
They would never do that on a roller skate or
exactly.
skateboard
So,
down there.
Basically, we just wanted the security, the safety of, or not the safety, but the privacy of the fence, being at the 6 feet there.
Thank you.
And if I may say, the people on the cul-de-sac above us, we have the majority of signatures. The two we don't have, one, we actually weren't able to contact either of them, but one we've heard would have signed. So
Okay.
we do have
Perfect.
our neighbors.
Thank you.
I had a question, and perhaps it's best for the applicant. Are you planning to add some greenery behind the fence? Tall trees or anything to soften the, because typically we'd have landscaping in front of the fence?
Yeah, we are going to be process of going through some procedures with some landscaper in town right now that's going to work in putting some trees and some greenery. There is some greenery right now with some grass and stuff like that, but the whole side uphill, which you saw the pictures of that, there's nothing there currently, but we are going to be doing something very soon on that.
And if you look at the present pictures, there was never any landscaping. It was just dirt and chicken wire and rocks. We moved in the end of September.
And about how long? I mean, you have a long property line there.
The total length of the fence is, I think, 105 feet, I think. I'm not sure exactly, to be honest with you.
Okay. That, I think, does anybody have questions still? Discussion?
Good first.
Okay, discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
To quote Robert Frost, "Good fences make good neighbors." This, in my mind, is a good fence. I don't see any of the concerns being particularly persuasive that are raised by some people speaking in public comments. The only findings I think we're willing to make is this major deviation finding. I don't see this significantly impacting nearby properties. I think it enhances the overall design, especially considering there's currently a downward slope into a fence that looks like a U, which is not very aesthetically pleasing, and I think would have more of a negative effect on property values. I don't see this as a special privilege. I get we can't evaluate that the neighbor already has a 6-foot fence, but it's tough to not. I'm not taking that into account in my analysis, but I don't think this is a special privilege, and I don't see this as being detrimental to the public, so I can make all the findings.
Any other?
Was that a motion?
No, no, we're in discussion.
Commissioner Becerra, might come to your surprise, but I wholeheartedly agree with you, Commissioner Velto.
I disagree, for that matter. I think a 100-foot fence right along a sidewalk with no greenery is a real detriment, because we would have street trees that would be required by the city of Reno every 20 or 30 feet, I think is the spacing requirement. And that canyon effect is a real thing. But you've got permission from your neighbors, and, the existing situation is not ideal. Any other discussion?
Commissioner Becerra, you bring up a good point, Chair. Are there conditions in there to address some of those concerns that Chair Rohrmeyer brought up, like for trees or shrubs or anything that we can chuck in there that's not an undue burden to any part of your neighbors?
So the landscaping requirements for subdivisions, they're complicated a little on how we've implemented them on corner lots specifically, because it requires landscaping in the front yard. And we look at, unfortunately, the lit width of that, the primary front, which only requires 2 trees. So when we look at it across the entire subdivision, that's when we, through a tentative map process, that's when we can address those things. But if you compare this lot to the lot next door by applying conditions for additional trees in this case, may be inappropriate, because it's not applicable to any other corner lot within the subdivision existing. So I wouldn't recommend that as a condition, but.
Okay, thank you, Carter. Just trying to hear the, not just perspective, but I know the expertise of Chair Rohrmeyer, and see where we can find a solution or compromise.
So, Commissioner Villanueva, so while I agree with Commissioner Rohrmeyer, I think that it's not necessarily the homeowners. This wasn't created by the homeowner, the problem that exists with regard to this fence. I think it comes down to, this is why we don't typically like hillside development because issues like this arise. And this is not typically a development that I would have been a fan of if it came in front of me. But it was approved at some point, and now the homeowner is trying to deal with the situation of privacy while also trying to kind of mitigate concerns of the neighbors. But generally speaking, yes, I do agree with you, Commissioner Romeyer, and that's something to consider when we approve developments in the future, especially hillside developments, when there's cuts and fills. But with respect to this particular application, I think it would be appropriate to allow the applicant to have some privacy and allow the fence to be put up.
Commissioner Del Villar, yeah, I don't really, I hear kind of everything everybody's saying. And again, while we can't put in conditions for trees and things, it would be nice if when they have it, when they look at having it landscaped, if maybe some of the trees could hang over the fence a little bit. That's all.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
In the matter of case number LDC 2500032, based upon compliance with the applicable findings, I move to approve the major deviation subject to the conditions, and I can make all the findings.
Commissioner Draculich, I second. I too can make all the findings.
All right, motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. None opposed?
Commissioner Draculich, you eliminated the opportunity for me to give Commissioner Velto a second, and that rarely happens.
Okay, I'll get you next time.
Good luck with your fence project. All right, closing the public hearings for development items, we're going to go to recommendation to City Council for appointment to the Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Commission.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Mike Raley, Planning Manager. As you know, Commissioner Harris resigned. He moved to Chicago, and he was one of our serving regional planning commissioners, so we need to make an appointment to replace him on the Regional Planning Commission. So this board will vote to make a recommendation to the City Council, and then the City Council will confirm the recommendation.
Commissioner Draculich, I would nominate Commissioner Villanueva if she's interested. I haven't talked to anybody about this, so I'm reading this for a time. I don't know if you wanted to do it or not.
Sorry, I actually was not paying attention. What are we talking about right now?
Regional planning.
Okay, let's vote. No.
Hey, just a nomination. We'll throw it out there for discussion.
Okay, for what? For the,
This would be an appointment for you to serve on the Regional Planning Commission.
do we have any other interested folks here? I think Commissioner Dalviar would be a great addition.
I'll also say that Commissioner Becerra has been our alternate for the past year.
Oh,
Has
okay.
been serving.
I was going to say, because Mandy would be really good too. I'm clearly this is all new for me, and I'm doing the best that I can, and I would not have a problem serving if that works for folks. If there's somebody better who wants to step up, I'm okay with that as well.
I don't think better is the choice. All the choices are good here.
Fair enough.
Okay, does anybody have a particular draw here? I think,
Who wants it?
go ahead.
I was saying who would like to
I
be.
thought you said you wanted.
No, who would like to be.
Velto will be coming off in
I'm already on it.
Oh,
so
okay. I would be happy to serve.
Who would?
Okay. Well, we would need a second.
I already made that. No, okay. We need a second.
Commissioner
Aside from me.
Draculich, I'll second that. Commissioner WR, is that what I'm hearing on my end?
Yes.
First. Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
There's one less night of your month available. All right. Speaking of, now we can move on to Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Liaison Report.
I do not have any information.
Okay, I'll give the update. Yours truly got appointed to the chair. and because Commissioner Armstrong was the chair, and this year is being served by the city of Reno. We have that going on. We had a presentation about data centers from Director Jeremy Smith, and we heard a nice update about the regional trails plan, which I believe is going to come to the city of Reno for a presentation as well. Yep, that seems like that wraps that up. So moving to staff announcements.
I've got kind of a quick laundry list of updates. I'll start with council updates. At their last meeting on the 22nd of January, the council upheld your recommendation for approval for the Carville Master Plan Amendment and zoning map amendment for the Reno Housing Authority. As you are all aware, there were 3 appeals on the council agenda that night. The council upheld the Planning Commission's approval of the Webb Data Center and denied this appeal from the Sierra Club. They overturned the PC denial of the 7th Street tentative map and approved the applicant's appeal. And then for the Plumas redevelopment, I think a lot of you know as the Lake Ridge project, that item was continued to allow the applicant more time to address council and neighbor concerns. So that will be coming back at a future date. It's undetermined when, but we anticipate that will likely come back in March to the council. Let's see. The Western Road zoning map amendment that you approved at your last meeting will be on the council agenda for next week for their consideration. Along with, as we discussed earlier, the data center possible text amendments will be presented on the 26th agenda at council. At the next meeting, they will also be appointing a new planning commission member to fill Commissioner Armstrong's seat, so that at our next meeting, we will have a new commissioner. So, as far as outside presentations and happenings, regional planning will be at our next meeting to provide update on the regional plan, updates on various regional discussions, including schools and data centers, will be part of their presentation. Mr. Howard with the Truckee Mills Trails Association was here tonight. He had to leave, but he's planning to come. We're going to get him on a future agenda as well to give an update on the regional trail plan. And the regional presentation, I think, is going to focus on not just City of Reno, but all jurisdictions and what's being done collectively to address those issues. I sent an email to the commission earlier this afternoon at the request of Commissioner Romeyer. We had reached out to NV Energy to ask them if they were willing to come and make a presentation on data centers and how they plan for their priorities and service. Unfortunately, NV Energy has declined to come back to the board and make a presentation. So at this point, that's kind of where we stand with that. And that's all I have.
Well, I'll be following up with them.
When's the next meeting for us? Sorry, interrupt.
Our next meeting is 2 weeks from today.
All right, thank you.
The 19th, I believe it is.
Yep.
Very good. Do we have any suggestions for future agenda items? Sounds like we do not. Closing that item, let's go to public comment. I don't see anyone in chambers. Do we have anyone online?
We do not have anyone on Zoom with their hand raised.
All right. Closing public comment. Moving to adjournment. So moved. Thank you, everyone.